Immersion. It's one of this year's most beloved words in the gaming industry. The Order 1886 was supposed to be this immersive cinematic experience. When The Witcher 3 came out, people were discussing what options you need to activate and deactivate in order to have more immersion. Whenever I read those things, I wonder if these people even know the definition of immersion. For me, immersion is not a checkbox in the settings that can be turned on or off. When you get immersed, you start to empathize with the people in this world. The world you are playing in becomes your second home. One part that helps this is references to points of location and points of interest. This is where a lot of games waste a huge portion of their potential to immerse the player in their world. Let's talk map markers for a second. When you get a mission in GTA, you get a point on your minimap, and during later years you even get a 3D HUD navigational aid, so to speak, so that you start driving after the carrot on a stick. The problem is that while you do this, you kind of blend out the rest of this huge world that the creators took years to build. During the missions in GTA 5, there was one mission that caught my attention because it did something different. You were supposed to get a car for the future heist and then deploy it somewhere hidden. You then proceed by calling your buddies to tell them where you hid the car. During that sequence, the character references a point on the map by describing it. For example, I stored the car behind the parking lot in West Vespucci. This was the only time where a certain point on the map was directly referenced. If more missions were like this, you wouldn't need the markers. If you were told you have to go to downtown Los Angeles to a specific building in Street X, you would be required to pull out the map, check where that street is, and then go there. Essentially, the minimap navigation does exactly that for you. But this small step would go a long way for immersion. The reason for that is that you are forced to expose yourself to that world. You need to find that point for yourself and then go there. Over the time, you would get to know the city. You would feel a sense of personal progression in that game. A sense of progression that can't be tracked by any in-game stats, but that is oh so sweet. You would not need to pull out the map anymore to set a marker for the next weapon trader because you know the city. You have spent several hours in this city and you know where to find the people that you need. This is immersion, and this is also where The Witcher 3 sometimes does things right. Most of the time during the main and side quests, you not just get a quest marker, but you also audibly get told where you will be able to find your target. But sadly, most of the time these are very vague, although I think this is already a huge step in the right direction. An upcoming game called Alex promises that kind of immersion. Alex is made by the creators of the famous Gothic series and also responsible for Risen. The game will feature a more science fiction take to the usual fantasy setting, something they call post-apocalyptic science fantasy. But most importantly, they say that they don't really want to use quest markers all too often. They rather tell you where to find stuff and then you have to go out and search for that location yourself. Let's hope that they are able to design and deliver a world that is worth diving into, since nothing is more fun than exploring a new world that is worth exploring. Those who have seen my video about the new game Victor ran know I had absolutely no clue what this game is when I got it. That means I didn't really know what exact features the game has apart from the ones that were advertised on the Steam site. This leaves me with two options how the purchase can play out. One, the gamble fails and the game is absolute shit. This can be minimized by reading some of the reviews and seeing if the most helpful reviews on Steam are actually positive or not, and what they have to say. Second, you get positively surprised and you keep finding new things that you didn't know about the game. This happened to me with Victor Vran. I was there running around slaying monsters, thinking I already saw it all, when all of a sudden a die popped up that enabled me to change the color of my gear. Now, if I had known that this feature is in the game, I would have thought, oh, okay, finally this thing shows up. But I didn't know anything about it, so my thought process was more like, holy crap, I can change the color of my equip, that's amazing. It is not a secret that people are having more fun and generally get happier if they find out things by themselves. Games are no exception there. We have all seen it in games when we found out that we could do specific things that probably weren't planned. For me, the famous Doom swing in GTA 4 that catapulted every car that came into contact with it hundreds of meters into the air comes to mind. But what if that enjoyment would also be given with features that were already planned from the developers? I just say it right here. The game industry and the game media are ruining the fun in exploring games and destroy the joy of anticipation. This pretty much got started for me with MMOs like World of Warcraft. Already weeks before a new raid got introduced in a patch, fan sites like MMO Champion had all the boss's skills data mined and all the possible loot drop was already found out, so there was absolutely no surprises left since the whole content of the patch was already public knowledge. Part of these things were what killed the secret world for me. It was a great, ambitious game, but after 1 or 2 weeks everybody had already solved all the riddles and it was sprayed all over the internet, and if you wanted to get some help in the chat without being spoiled, you directly just got told to learn how to Google. Well, the problem is, I don't want that. But the guy has a point. Early on I was blaming the game industry as a whole for that problem, but part of it is of course also the player himself. Just because the information is out there, you don't have to look it up and hunt it down. Sadly, if you want to have a good opinion if the game is any good, you will have to read reviews, and here's where the game media is coming into play. There are too many websites that got every single feature out of a game and put it on a plate in a review, so that you can't easily get a good opinion without being told about every single facet of the game. Game trailers are also frequently spoiling hidden features that would have felt amazing if you hadn't had any idea about it. Ignoring the disaster that Assassin's Creed Unity turned out, imagine if you suddenly found yourself in World War II through a time glitch without any expectations of this. Sadly, we did not have a chance, since Ubisoft decided to put a sequence of this into one of the game's trailers to hype up the game prior to release. And that is where it's at. Those companies don't really care about gamers enjoying their games. They just want plain sales. That is also the reason why Destiny is being cheered on by companies as a huge success, while being highly controversial with a mostly negative connotation among the community. Although, for personal enjoyment, I recommend each and every one of you dear viewers to pick a game and just have a go at it without reading a whole encyclopedia on every single feature. Because in the end, sometimes it is worth more to know less.